Hello, all you wonderful mitherers! It's your least favorite Ghostface main here, back at it again with a brand new discussion video. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Mither, I thought you were a Legion main. Just the other day you were saying that Ghostface was the worst killer in the game. You're right, I was. But with the changes he received from the PTB, which gave him the opportunities and tracking to outwit and avoid people trying to detect him and keep his power alive, he's not only not the worst killer in the game, but by M1 killer standards, he's really, really good. At least, that's how it's felt so far. Like everyone else, I've only had 2 days to test the live Ghostface, but I've already put several hours into him, as well as enough points to get Prestige 3, so I feel I've played him extensively enough to, at the least, have a solid first impression. And in this video, I'd like to share my first impression. What's good, what's bad, why I think he's one of the best M1 killers in the game, and what I think needs to be changed. So, for those who are still uninformed, Ghostface's power allows him to remove his red stain and terror radius as well as lean around corners to stalk survivors, which marks them and applies the exposed status effect for 45 seconds. To counter this, Ghostface can lose his stealth and stalking if a survivor either looks at him long enough or if he attacks, after which it goes on a very lengthy cooldown. In addition, he's able to crouch wherever he likes and whenever he likes, which reduces his movement speed but also drastically reduces his height, stealthy or not, which makes him much harder to see. Back in the PTB, this power was garbage because he would be detected the instant a survivor caught them on their camera. Their third-person 360-degree camera. But they fixed him up so that it takes 1.5 seconds to fully detect him, during which both him and the survivor detecting him receive an audio cue, as well as a 0.3 second buffer before the detection begins. This buffer also occurs if he manages to hide in time, and if it ends, then the detection timer resets for that survivor and they have to do it all over again. In other words, Ghostface now has substantial time to hide himself before his power can be shut off. As an example, let me show you this clip. I'm using my power to stalk 2 different survivors who are trying to go for an unhook, and everyone involved knows I'm there. I'm under a lot of pressure to keep my power intact, but thanks to the merciful blessing of these 2 rocks, I'm able to crouch behind them as well as use my lean feature to stalk from behind cover, allowing me to dance around and gradually mark both survivors at once while under the pressure of 3 different people trying to bust me out of my power. In the PTB, they would have just had to have me on their camera and I would immediately lose my power. My entire power. These buffs were huge, and I love them. This change is exactly what Ghostface needed. By rewarding him for reacting in time, he can keep his ability to stalk survivors, and more importantly, he can keep his stealth. This is going to come as a surprise, but I think the stalking is the weakest part of his ability. Now, don't get me wrong, the stalking is awesome, but everything else is, well, I can only describe it as AAH! But when you combine the stalking and the stealth, you get a killer that is, frankly, insanely fun and genuinely solid. But why do I think his basic stealth outshines his ability to one-hit down survivors? Well, there's several reasons. The first is sneaking up on survivors. Unlike most stealth killers, Ghostface can attack out of his stealth like Spirit, while Wraith has to uncloak, Pig has to either uncrouch or channel an ambush, and Freddy has to sleep survivors. In addition, Ghostface moves at the default movement speed the entire time, while Tier 1 Michael, for example, only moves 5% faster than a running survivor. Ghostface is, frankly, one of the best killers at ambushing in the game. The only thing holding him back is the sound he makes at an 8-meter distance, but even with those in mind, he's still excellent as an ambushing surprise killer. For example, in this clip, I'm chasing down a marked David when he vaults into the Grim Pantry. Now, normally between red stains and terror music, it would be impossible to try and sneak up on him here. But because I have neither of those, I'm able to break chase, confuse him by removing any indications of my presence, counter-rotate, and have him walk right into my loving knife. This David also fell for Ghostface's stealth later on, when he had no idea where I was, allowing me to easily sneak up on him and down him once more. The fact that Ghostface is able to hide his red stain for the entirety of Nightshot makes any high wall loop significantly more dangerous. His power is not only a stealth tool, it is a formidable chase tool with remarkable potential. It's essentially a 24/7 beast of prey that you can activate at will. This is not the only utility Ghostface has in a chase, however. His crouch, slow as it is extremely useful for hiding your presence on low wall loops, even if your red stain is visible. Let's take a look at this David again. He knows I'm somewhere because I'm out of stealth, and I know he's camping a pallet to avoid getting hit once I show myself. In response, I approach him through the stairs in a more roundabout fashion to confuse him and make him wonder where I am. When I come out though, the pallet is to my left, and I know he knows I'm here because I'm in full view. But thanks to my crouch, I'm able to go behind the short low wall so that the only indication of my presence is my stain, then moonwalk and lunge through the pallet before David can figure out where I am and react to what I'm doing because I'm too short for him to see me. Now, I don't want to make it look like I'm ragging on this David, especially for how wholesome he was in the post-game chat. Shoutouts to Sir Soberline for being a really good sport. It's rare to find a survivor being genuinely nice these days. So, I'll use this example on another survivor. In this clip, I'm being chased around a short wall loop on Disturbed Ward. Now, normally, the best way to deal with a loop like this is to force it, as it's just safe enough to not be mind-gameable without bloodlust. But, once more, I was able to crouch at the loop, sufficiently hiding my red stain and presence, which confused the Dwight and forced him to remain stationary so as to not run into me, letting me pop up and get a hit in. Later on, I once more used the crouch to catch this same Dwight off guard at another low wall loop, and though I misjudged where he was and missed my lunge, I still shocked him into throwing down the pallet, effectively deleting yet another safe loop. So, you have a tool that is excellent for sneaking up on survivors and provides awesome potential for mind games due to a complete lack of a red stain. On top of that, Ghostface can put survivors on a one-hit down. For an M1 killer, he has the potential to render chases completely non-existent. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still fairly detectable and can still be looped or rendered into a basic M1 killer, but between the stealth, lack of stain, and exposed effects, he has much more chase utility at his disposal than most M1 killers, with a healthy helping of being all sneaky breaky-like on top of that. But as fun as useful as he is, there are flaws that need to be addressed. So, let's take a look at those. Remember how I compared Nitro to Beast of Prey? Well, it's ironic that that's a Huntress perk because detecting Ghostface is basically hunting Hatchet's the killer. Meaning, it's more inconsistent than that one kid in your group project. You know the one. As a survivor, there have been instances where I was staring straight at Ghostface in an open field without even the tiniest blade of grass to obstruct my view of him, and he didn't once get close to being detected for 20 seconds, and only lost his power once he hit me. As Ghostface, I have seen survivors struggling to detect me as I'm chasing them simply because it just doesn't work. However, at the exact same time, I have had issues with being seen ducking fully and completely behind cover, and the survivor nevertheless completing the detection phase through the fucking wall and pulling me out of Night Shroud. Half the time I'm thinking, that should have detected. The other half I'm thinking, that should not have detected. It's completely and utterly inconsistent for both sides. Luckily though, it kind of balances out thanks to that, meaning it's less of a weakness and more of a weirdness. But don't get me wrong, there are weaknesses in his kit. The first is the fact that leaning is incredibly clunky, making it hard to effectively stalk from behind walls and corners. But a much more glaring issue is Night Shroud's cooldown. You lose your stealth for being seen or for attacking, and you cannot become stealthy again for an entire 30 seconds. For the next half minute, you have no choice but to be a basic M1 killer. Night Shroud is a powerful ability, don't get me wrong, but it's not so powerful that you should lose it for 30 seconds, let alone for hitting a survivor too, which is another big issue. Ghostface loses his entire power for 30 seconds just for hitting a survivor, for chasing, for doing his job as a killer. He has to choose between keeping his power or not chasing survivors. I can maybe understand if you hit a non-marked survivor, but losing your entire power for 30 seconds just for hitting a marked survivor? You used your power in the most effective and correct way possible. You are the pinnacle of how Ghostface is meant to be played, and your reward is a short chase, after which you'll be a basic M1 killer for 30 seconds. Now, I know some may be thinking that the reward of how good a power Night Shroud is for chases can outweigh that negative, which is a reasonable claim. But depending on where the other survivors are after you hit or down someone, what they're doing, how much pressure Ghostface is under, or whether or not that survivor went down when you hit them in the first place, the negatives could easily outweigh the positives. He has no stealth, no extra chase utility, and no stalking for 30 seconds. In a lot of cases that can and will be a punishment, and a harsh one at that. A punishment for using your power correctly and effectively. That is really dumb. I'm sorry, but it is. The third biggest issue with his power is the advantages survivors have in detecting Ghostface. Sure, it's inconsistent, mostly at close range, but from afar or from certain angles, it works the way it was meant to, and this could be a serious problem. Survivors have a third-person 360-degree camera that they can use for heightened situational awareness to easily spot Ghostface, as well as peek around walls while still hiding behind them to detect Ghostface without ever giving him the opportunity to stalk. To make matters worse, Ghostface does not receive a detection indicator if the survivor is somewhere within his field of view, even if he can't actually see them, which he most likely won't, thanks to survivor stealth and immersion. So not only does he not know where to hide, but he also has 1.5 seconds to react instead of 1.8. Less time to react to a harder to detect danger is not good. Not to mention, hooked survivors can still detect him for some reason, meaning that even if you aren't camping, that's essentially a 32-meter radius around the hooked survivor in which you can't use your power lest it get taken away immediately. And the fourth and final gripe I have with Ghostface's power is Object of Obsession. This perk is already a total sleeper meta and 100% broken. The risk of being seen by the killer is absolutely outweighed by being able to detect them at all times no matter what. Its extremely powerful recon was already the bane of stealth killers' existences, but it's even more so on Ghostface because the other stealth killers all have something else to their kit. Pig has her dash and her traps, Wraith has map mobility and the windstorm, Michael is immune to detection perks at tier 1. Ghostface has nothing but his stealth, and when someone with Object is in the match, Ghostface cannot be stealthy, meaning he has no power. Every single advantage that Night Shroud gives him is completely erased by Object. He can't stalk you because you can see him through walls. He can't sneak up on you because you can see him through walls. He can't use his lack of a red stain to mind game you because you can see him through fucking walls! He has no power against an Object user, and chances are, if they have Object, they're probably also the spotter for a Survive with Friends group, meaning they'll tell their friends exactly where Ghostface is, so he effectively has no power against them either. Object of Obsession deletes Ghostface's power from the game. This is not okay. This needs to go right now. These are the primary issues I have with Ghostface's power. There are some smaller things, but these are what I think need to be addressed the most. And for the most part, I think I know how to fix them. Firstly, make the detection more consistent for both sides. I'm not sure how exactly this would be done, either through adjustments or bug fixing, but it needs to happen. Looking at Ghostface needs to count as looking at him, and hiding from the survivors needs to count as hiding. Secondly, make the detection indicator trigger for all survivors, not just survivors outside of Ghostface's FOV. Just because they're in front of him doesn't mean he can see them. Thirdly, and this is just a personal preference, make the detection buffer zone last for half a second instead of 0.3 seconds. This will work as a buff nerf towards Ghostface by giving him a longer period before the detection phase begins, while simultaneously forcing him to wait a little bit longer before he can go back to stalking a survivor who's detected him. More importantly, however, a total time of 2 seconds to detect Ghostface up from 1.8 seconds feels better as a mathematical number, but also gives him just enough extra time to attempt risky plays when it comes to Night Shroud and stalking. I feel like Ghostface doesn't have enough time to make adventurous plays when it comes to survivors who know he's there, and that kinda sucks. I think all killers should have a little leeway that allows them to attempt risky decisions, and right now it just feels like he gets detected too fast for that to work out. Fourthly, reduce the overall cooldown of Night Shroud to 25 seconds, down from 30. And in addition, make the timer shorter depending on what Ghostface did to come out of stealth. If he downed a survivor while Night Shroud was active, then make the timer 20 seconds. If the survivor was marked, make it 15 seconds. Reward him for using his power the way it was meant to be used, not punish him. Fifth, make it so that downed and hooked survivors can't detect Ghostface. I shouldn't have to explain why this needs to happen. This is a really stupid fucking feature and everyone hates it. And last but not least, make Ghostface immune to aura reading perks while Night Shroud is active. Not all detection perks, not premonition, not spine chill, just aura perks, similar to tier 1 Michael. As it stands now, these perks are far too powerful against Ghostyboy, especially Object of Obsession. By making them only work when he's out of stealth, they're still highly applicable against him, but don't automatically counter his power. And that's it really, that's all I have to say about Ghostface. His power is genuinely solid with both stealth and chase utility, but there are a few glaring issues that need to be changed. I hope that Ghostface is tweaked to work better in certain situations and against certain loadouts, but even if he isn't, I still have high hopes for him. Thanks for listening to my first impressions of Ghostface, and remember, no matter who I may play, it's always okay to main Legion.